Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to continue our lecture series on World War One, and we're actually going to start talking about the actual war itself. With the last lecture, we ended off with the assassination of Franz Ferdinand by Gavrilo Princip, which led to a domino effect of multiple nations declaring war with each other. And so now the war's happening, and all sides really wanted to go to war. Everybody, because of the idea of social Darwinism and this idea that everybody believed that their ethnic group or racial group was superior to the other, they wanted to express that superiority because of the rise of militarism. They thought they had the means to express that superiority, and they had something to gain from war, which was more colonies for their colonial empires and their economy. So everybody really kind of wanted war. Germany's going to get the blame for it at the end, but to be very clear, this war probably would have happened anyway. And so everybody already kind of had plans for, and evidence of that is that all these nations already kind of had plans for what to do when they went to war. And so the French plan was a plan that was essentially, based on the idea that Germany have more men to fight, and so they were going to have to essentially understand that they're going to be outnumbered. Their plan is going to be based on revenge from Alsace and Lorraine, the Franco-Prussian War that they had lost earlier. And so if you're outnumbered and you're angry, what's your battle plan going to be? It's going to be looking for that knockout blow, and that's kind of what the French are going to do. They know they can't fight a defensive war, so they want to come out of the gates swinging and hopefully, knock Germany out and do it relatively quickly. Their motivation for that is the fact that they had lost the Franco-Prussian War earlier, which gave Germany Alsace and Lorraine. And so this plan is mostly based on revenge. The name of the plan is going to be called Plan 17, very creatively because it's, the one of 17 different plans they had to pick from. And so the plan essentially has two parts. One, it's clear the west bank of the Rhine. And so if you know anything about like kind of German geography or German-French geography, the Rhineland is some of the most valuable land in Germany. The Rhine is a river. And so a lot of the German resources are located in that area. It's very valuable. And so, and it's right on the border between France and Germany in that general area. And the second, and that's the knockout blow. If they think if they can punch through the Rhineland, then they can advance on to through the rest of Germany. So that's the thing that's going to knock out Germany. They believe it won't work out that way. And it's going to require a concentration of forces right within that Alsace and Lorraine region, which Germany is going to actually anticipate and be able to counter. The other part of the plan is they need to demonstrate to their ally Russia that France was going to go on the immediate offensive. Russia has always been skeptical of Europe. Russia is partially within Europe and partially within Asia. They've always felt like outsiders. They're not as technologically advanced as the European countries. And, they've got this aristocracy, the czars, that have, just always kind of felt like outsiders in Europe, even though they've kind of been the policemen of Europe for a long portion of history. They've always felt like outsiders. And so they don't trust France. They really think that France might be setting them up, that, France declares war on Germany after, Russia and Germany declare war. And, Russia, there's this conspiracy theory within Russia that, that France was going to declare war on Germany, but then never attack. And then when Russia attacked, France was just going to let Germany and Russia fight until they're both weak, and then France would attack both of them. And so the French know that the Russians think that, even though that's not the plan. So they want a strong attack to prove to Russia that they actually are going to fight and that Russia should mobilize and attack. So Russia, essentially, they're not going to do anything until France shows that they're going to mobilize and actually fight. And so that's part of their alliance that France has to engage first. So they're going to assume that Germany is going to attack through Alsace and Lorraine, and so they're going to mass their army right in that Alsace and Lorraine region. So take a look here. This is essentially the French plan. You can see Germany to the east, France is to the west, and Plan 17. They're going to punch right into the middle of Germany. Now, what is the German plan? Well, if France is amassing all of their forces right on the border there of Germany, the French or the German plan is really easy. It's going to be called the Schlieffen plan. It's a sickle stroke move, so it's curved like a sickle, like a wheat sickle. They're just going to go around the French forces. And so their plan is they're like, fine, go build up your forces there. We don't care. We're just going to go around you and sweep down and attack Paris. Now, to be able to do that, they're going to have to swing through Luxembourg and Belgium. When they swing through Belgium, Belgium is neutral, and they actually have a defensive alliance with England. So when Germany sweeps through Belgium, Belgium was trying to stay out of it, and Germany just invades them anyway to get to France. That's going to be the thing that brings Great Britain into the war. It's also going to have an impact. The fact that they sweep through Belgium to attack France is also going to be impactful when it comes to World War II, because the British and the French want to rally the world against Germany. They start propaganda, false propaganda, talking about German atrocities in Belgium. They're going to essentially say the Germans are like bayoneting babies in the streets. Well, the world's going to believe that. They're going to believe that the vicious Huns, which is a derogatory term for the Germans, are murdering innocents in Belgium, and it's kind of going to rally. The United States in particular is going to believe that. Well, when the war's over, we're going to find out that that's not true. Well, why is that then impactful for World War II? Well, because it's the boy who cried wolf, right? Once you get caught in a big lie like that, people don't believe you in the future. And so in World War II, when Germany really is killing innocent civilians, Jews, but it's not just Jews, homosexuals, gypsies, communists, political dissidents, but mostly Jews. When Germany's committing these humanitarian atrocities in World War II, nobody's going to believe them. They're going to be like, oh, you fooled us once during World War I and talked about German atrocities. You won't fool us again. And, which is really unfortunate, because in World War II, it actually does happen. So, what's the German plan? Well, it's called the Schlieffen plan, named after the guy that comes up with the plan. It's a plan based on reality. The Central Powers are Central Powers because they're surrounded by enemies. They're in the center of enemies. They know they've got Russia to the east and France to the west. And so they have to, they know they don't want to fight a two-front war. They don't want to have to send half their army to Russia and half their army to France, because then they're fighting essentially, with their hands tied behind their back. They want to send their whole army in one direction, win, and then send their whole army in the other direction to win. And so what they do is that they just do the math, and they recognize that France is going to mobilize quickest, and that Russia is going to mobilize very slow because they don't have enough railroads, they don't have enough paved roads, that it's the rainy season and they're going to have to move their troops through dirt roads, or essentially mud roads, either on horseback or by foot, and that's going to take forever. Plus, the Russian generals just aren't as good and they're not as organized, so it's going to take a long time. So they figure they got about 6 weeks before Russia is really a threat. And so they decide that they're going to attack France first because they can mobilize quickly. They're going to be the biggest threat, the quickest. So they think they have 6 weeks to focus on France before they have to turn their attention to Russia. And so they decide, the Schlieffen plan decides, okay, so then let's attack France first. We recognize that they built up the majority of their forces in the Alsace-Lorraine region. They don't want to get bogged down in that fight there because it will take more than 6 weeks to defeat that large of an army. So they decide to just go around it through Belgium. And so, the plan actually initially is successful until the French are actually able to slow the German advance down. So ultimately, the Schlieffen plan won't work, although it almost does. It gets really close. They feel like France is going to fall quickly within that 6 period time, and legitimately, it almost does. It's the miracle at the Marne that essentially saves. So that's Germany. That's the threat that they're under. Russia is attacking from the east. France is attacking from the west, and they've got to counteract that. And they do that essentially with this sickle stroke. So you can see here their plan takes them through, parts of the Netherlands, but mostly through Brussels and Luxembourg, and which are neutral nations. That's a no-no. You're not supposed to do that. And they sweep down towards Paris. They're going to get stopped. See that river? The Seine actually cuts through Paris, but the Marne is just ahead of Paris. It's that river. This is where the French are going to very heroically get their soldiers out to the Marne to stop the German advance. They do that. Soldiers are literally getting out to the Marne by riding bicycles. The Parisian taxi drivers are going to start to, 4 or 5, literally hundreds of taxis are going to make hundreds of trips carrying 4 or 5 soldiers at a time out to the Marne to try and stop the German advance. And so the First Battle of the Marne will happen on September 4th, 1914. And when it does, the Germans are actually going to successfully be stopped. Now, what happens is the two sides clash, and the French, with the help of the BEF, or the British Expeditionary Force, are going to be able to slow down the advance in enough time to get the soldiers, the reserve soldiers in Paris, out to the front. And they're essentially meeting out in a big field, and there starts to become a stalemate. And the two sides recognize very quickly that they're going to have to dig in. And by dig in, I literally mean dig in, right? We've got these new armies with new technology, with machine guns and artillery, and they're standing out in a field shooting at each other in the open. That's just crazy, right? And so what we see is that each side starts to dig defensive entrenchments. They dig a hole in the ground that they can stand in and kind of shoot over so they can protect themselves. Well, this is the start of trench warfare, right? It starts out as kind of individual foxholes. They dig a hole and hide in it and shoot the people that are standing up on the other side. Well, both sides start to dig in, and they start to connect those foxholes, and they eventually build a trench. And so we see one line of French trenches that are, in between, in between Paris and the Germans, and one line of German trenches, and they're firing at each other. So, the Germans are firing at the French over here, and there's a big space, an empty gap called no man's land in between. Now, occasionally, the Germans will get up out of their trench, run across no man's land, and try to attack the French, while the French are just shooting at them the whole time, right? Well, that doesn't work out well. So what each side starts to do is they start to try to outflank each other. So the Germans recognize if they can build their trench around this way, they can fire down the French trenches. So the Germans start to try and build a trench around the French. Well, the French see that. You can't hide it. So they try to build their trench around the Germans. And then all of a sudden, you start to see these trenches that are trying to outflank each other, and they'll do that all the way until they get to the sea. That is the ocean, right? There's a difference between the sea and the ocean. It's the sea. And so they call that the race to the sea. And so literally hundreds of miles of trenches are going to be built, essentially trying to outflank each other. This is going to be the beginning of trench warfare, which is going to be, we'll talk about that in detail in a future lecture, but it's going to be an absolutely brutal type of warfare, where not only will your enemy's bullets kill you, but the conditions of the trenches will kill you. So it's absolutely, it's going to be absolutely awful. Okay. That is where we are going to leave off for this lecture. I appreciate your time. We'll pick up here tomorrow with the Great War Part Two, where we will start to talk about the actual trench warfare and what it's like to fight in the trenches. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good day, and I will see you again shortly.